Hello, and welcome to critiques for lesson 5 on drawing the final caricature sketch, or the final rendering. There's actually going to be 3 major components I'm going to critique. One is the overall structure, the alignment, the perspective, the anatomy, and how that looks and how that fits into the overall piece. The second major thing I'll be helping with, I think, will be the exaggeration choices, or if the exaggeration or likeness could be improved, I'll make some corrections on certain areas of people's drawings. And then third, possibly I'll get into some style issues where maybe the style of the drawing could be improved or the rendering could be done in a slightly different way. I might offer some suggestions. But that's not as important to me as the structure and the exaggeration and likeness, because that's really the thing I want to emphasize most in this course as being important at this fundamental level. The style and the rendering, that's, that'll come later the more that you practice your fundamentals. This is Mick Nelson's drawing of Tommy Lee Jones, and it's one of those sketches where, again, I could see where it was going, I could tell who it's supposed to be, but it didn't quite hit the mark. And I'm not sure what happened between your rough sketch and abstraction and the final drawing, because the abstraction looks pretty solid. I really like the shapes that you've created here. The forehead looks good, and how it relates to the rest of the face. Everything looks even, and the abstraction is well done, but I don't think you ended up following the abstraction on your final drawing for some reason. Like the forehead looks like it came out too far. The forehead looks like it just popped out too far, and everything looks like it's sort of, skewed a little bit to the upper right. And I don't know, it's just the angles and everything are just not quite lining up. It's something about it is just a little skewed and a little off. And it's hard to tell exactly what it is until I would get in there and maybe do a tracing of it. And I could spend time on that, but I think what might be more helpful for you to hear is actually some of the specific decisions about the shapes you've created around the nose and the eyes specifically, that they just kind of got away from you. They don't look structurally sound, and you kind of miss the likeness, especially in the eyes. And I think what's hurting the eye likeness is you've drawn them too large on the head. Older men especially, more than any other type, are going to have much smaller eyes in relation to everything else on their face and compared to the average. And you've given them the eyes of sort of like a 16-year-old girl. They're very big and doe-eyed. And his eyes are just a lot more small on his face. Even though he's not squinting, there's the flesh sags and makes the eye openings a little bit smaller when you get older. And just his head shape and the fat on the face makes the face larger and broader in comparison to the eyes themselves. So I'll show you how I might redraw the eyes in this particular situation. All right, so I'm drawing in a layer right above a dimmed down version of this drawing. And I think I will draw just a quick abstraction, a couple rhythms here to connect the eyes up to one another. But I'm gonna make the abstraction a little smaller. Yeah, for the eye openings here. And then I'm gonna have a center line. Everything's gotta be oriented around a center line. Otherwise things like this happen where the forehead goes off into its own direction. It doesn't seem like it fits the rest of the face. If I were to redraw that forehead, it would be something more like akin to that. Okay, let's find the rhythm for the lower bags of the eyes. Looks like the lower bags of the eyes gave you a little bit of difficulty as well. He has very, very unusual eye bags. It's like the creases are there for the bags under the eyes, but there's no flesh inside them. It's like they've been deflated or something. Perhaps he has had some work done and took the fat out from underneath the eyes. It looks a little weird, but that's something that's very distinctive about him that we're going to try to capture in this sketch. The nose too, I can see kind of why you made that choice to make this really extreme dip in the nose, but it's really not working. It feels like the bridge of the nose is completely out of line with the rest of the face. So we're starting with the bridge of the nose here. We're gonna draw that at a more correct angle, and then the ball of the nose can come out further, but I think what you had done where you drew the bridge of the nose angling down into the left was just a bit too much distortion. I like the choice of photos though. Some people are choosing photos for these assignments that are not ideal with kind of really bad lighting, like lighting done with a flash. And this is a good studio photo that shows really decent shadow edges and nice halftones, so there's a lot to work with here. So good choice on the photo. Okay, so I've got a bit of a sketch slash abstraction sort of forming here. So let's take a look what it looks like without the rough sketch underneath. Okay, and I might actually just continue the rest of the drawing without your sketch underneath. I got into the neighborhood and I have your overall head shape in there and the big decisions that you did make. Now let's make the smaller decisions and figure out how to make it look more like him. So the shadows patterns are a little soft. I'm going to try to find edges for those shadow patterns. And where there's a hard edge, I'm going to make it harder. And when there's a soft edge, I'll try to make it a little softer. And just taking some artistic license with that. Sometimes in art, you have to change the reference photo or the model that you see in front of you just a bit to make it a little bit more stronger of a sketch. Because the main thing that you need to be concerned yourself with is how the drawing turns out. You don't have to be totally a slave to the photo and all the shapes that you see there. I can see that you weren't actually. Your shading is relatively simple and almost a little cartoon-like. I do like the texture that you have on your finished drawing. It's kind of a fun effect, but the painting feels, or the rendering feels very unresolved and sort of half-finished and not really, you didn't really sort of commit to the darks and commit to the halftones. And for a finished drawing, if you want to call it a finished drawing, it has to be, you have to, by definition, commit to the shapes you make and fully resolve them. So squint down a lot at your reference photo to see what shapes meld together, and if they meld together and sort of the edges between one dark shape and another sort of disappear, that's a good place where you can blend the edge and make a softer edge or a lost edge even, and not really make any distinction. Like an area of the inside corner of the eye here is one such area where there's just not much information, and when I squint down, I don't see anything, and that's kind of a nice effect, I think, in the drawing. You don't want to have always as much detail in your drawing as there is in the photo. And again, that's not a problem you have in your finished drawing. It's not overly detailed, of course, but I don't want you to get the impression that by, with a lot of this advice and this showing you how I have more attention to detail, that I don't want you to think that I always try to be a slave to everything I see and try to produce every wrinkle and every halftone that's in the photo, because that will just take you a long time, and unless you want to be a photorealistic or hyper-realistic painter, you really don't want to be doing that. You just want to edit and simplify the drawing to where the drawing just looks cool. There's just the cool factor. It's sometimes hard to describe, but I think it's personally good shape design, good edge control, and good values will get that cool finished drawing look. So there's actually not a really strong edge here. It's more of just a change in the halftone. And that's the thing too, if you want to get away from that cartoony look where you have strong outlines around everything, you can't be building your shapes with outlines. There's going to be a line initially in there, a very light line, and then you can shade right up to it and make that line disappear, and then you'll have a more realistic look to your drawings. As you get more advanced, you're going to want to get away from outlines, I think. It's just a personal style. I mean, some people make a great career out of doing work with strong outlines, and that's fine, you know. Like I said, it's all just personal style, but I'm here to show you kind of how I like to do things, and I like to try to get away from the cartoony look when I'm doing illustrations and paintings. And those are all about values and edges. That's how you tell the story. It's not with the lines themselves. So it's getting kind of that, you know, cool look. It's looking a little bit more finished. It has kind of a fun design to it. I'm going to darken this eyebrow. Pay attention to how the hair grows on these eyebrows. There's like sort of contrasting patterns where the hair will be going one direction and then it'll switch to a different one. Usually at the peak of the eyebrow is when the opposing hair strokes will come into play. Now let's move over to this other eye here. And this eye is in a bit more shadow. It's a little more undefined and hard to pick out details. And if that's the case, don't try to force more details in there. Don't try to lighten it up. Just draw what you see. And maybe figure out which eye you want to have more attention drawn to. In portraiture, generally you want to pick a dominant eye. That's something a lot of portrait artists, a term they throw around a lot, is an eye that's a little bit more focused, it's a little bit more rendered and resolved, maybe it's more contrasty. And for us, I think it's this eye here on the left is going to be our center of interest, whereas the eye on the right, it's going to be more in shadow, it's going to fall back into shadow a little bit, so we're not going to be spending much time rendering that one. Or not putting as interesting brush strokes in it either. Draw the borders of the eye bag here. So very lightly I'll draw on the outlines of the eyes. Figure out where the change in planes are from the lower lid here. The lower lid is a distinct shape on most people from the bag under the eyes. The bag under the eyes is not the lower lid. And there'll be slightly different values on them because of the way the light is hitting from above and casting a shadow. Okay. And I'm just going to glaze that whole area with an overall value, maybe a couple different passes of value, just to sort of get a tone in there, but keep it simple and not overthinking it. So everything in there's not going to be anything brighter than say this value. So it's not going to compete as much with the eye on the left. It's definitely there's going to be some darker shapes, that's for sure, but nothing too bright on that side, except maybe the highlights in the eyeballs themselves. And these values are really close together under the eyebrow. Almost no distinction between the eyebrow and the skin under the eyebrow. However, the bags under the eyes have a little bit more creases to them, a little more texture, and I don't want to draw too much attention to them, but I want a little bit more in there to capture the character of those fleshy bags. That far plane, side plane of the nose is in a bit of shadow there, so it's going to be a bit darker. There's so many interesting little things and texture bits going on in there. It's hard to know how to simplify them sometimes, so I'll just kind of take a guess on how I might want to solve that, just maybe with a few crisscross lines to show those little individual pockets of tiny bits of texture. It's hard to know what they are. I guess it's just sort of wrinkled flesh. Okay, let's grab a little bit of a white for the highlights here. And the highlights themselves aren't very bright. It's tempting sometimes to draw really bright highlights in the eyes to get that twinkle, but it's not appropriate for every lighting situation. Okay, so there's a lot more around the eye here, some surrounding areas and interesting details I could get involved with, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to give you a sense of how I might go about doing a more interesting finished look to this caricature. There are definitely some corrections in the structure you can make, as I mentioned earlier, with how you got away from the abstraction a little bit in this final drawing. But to take your drawings to the next level, you gotta just slow down and focus on areas. And the final drawing stage is where you could do that. You don't have to think so much anymore about working from big to small, from the general to the specific. Now you can really hone in on an area, finish it, and move on to another area. But don't lose sight of the big picture, meaning think of an area that you want to have more rendering, more finish to, more of a center of interest. Maybe give a little more attention and loving care to that area. And the other areas can be rendered nicely, but maybe not quite as much detail or as attention to detail in those areas. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this tasting, the sample of the critiques that the premium students get. There's a lot more in the premium section where I look at a lot of people's different finished drawings, and they all have different problems that they're struggling with. And nobody's problems are exactly the same. So one of the benefits of premium membership is you get access to all these extra reviews of student works that might help you in your own, because you'll find something that you're struggling with that another student is facing and that I might be addressing. So go to proko.com/caricature and sign up for the premium course and get access to lots of great content to really help improve your caricature drawings.